Look, I'm going to be straight with you. When the Galactic Council assigned me Commander Zixthor of the Valtorian Imperial Fleet to babysit a human, I thought it was a joke. A really bad one. The kind of joke your uncle makes at family gatherings that makes everyone groan and check their chronometers to see if it's socially acceptable to leave yet. But no, it was real. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. And the human's name was Marcus Chen, which I learned to pronounce after only 17 attempts and one minor diplomatic incident involving my pronouncing it as Marcus Shen, and him laughing so hard he spilled his coffee on my ceremonial robes. The coffee, by the way, was a beverage so caustic that it dissolved the molecular bonds in synthetic fabric. This should have been my first warning. Marcus was assigned to our deep space research vessel, the Infinite Probability, as part of some cultural exchange program that I definitely didn't read the full briefing on. Something about humans wanting to learn from other species, and the Council thinking it would be good for interspecies relations. What they didn't mention in the 2-sentence summary I skimmed was that humans are basically walking chaos engines wrapped in skin that bruises if you look at it wrong. The man stood barely 1.8 meters tall, which made him shorter than most sentient species in the known galaxy. He had no natural armor plating, no venom sacs, no ability to photosynthesize, and his teeth were so pathetically flat that I initially thought he was a juvenile of his species. When I asked about this, he grinned, which was apparently a friendly gesture and not a threat display, and said, "Oh, buddy, you should see what we can do with these teeth anyway." I didn't know what to make of that. Still don't, honestly. Our mission was simple: catalog biological specimens on Theta 7, an uninhabited planet in the outer reaches that preliminary scans suggested contained unique fauna. Easy, routine. The kind of assignment you give to cadets and researchers who need some field experience without any actual danger. That's when we found the cubs. They were from a species we'd never encountered before. What our xenobiologist Dr. Thessa immediately classified as apex predator juveniles. 3 of them, each about the size of a human child. With midnight blue fur, 6 legs, and eyes that glowed like dying stars. Beautiful creatures, really, if you ignored the retractable claws that could probably disembowel a Krellian war beast and the teeth that suggested their species had evolved to eat things that really didn't want to be eaten. We found them huddled in what remained of a collapsed den, making these high-pitched distress calls that even my translator couldn't properly interpret. Dr. Thessa's scans revealed the problem immediately. Their parent was dead, killed by some kind of territorial dispute with another predator. And these 3 had been alone for at least 4 planetary rotations. "They're starving," Dr. Thessa announced, her antennae drooping with concern. Dr. Thessa was a Quillarian, a species known for their empathy and their absolutely insufferable need to rescue every creature they encountered. "We need to feed them immediately." "Agreed," I said, because I'm not a monster, despite what the annual performance reviews sometimes suggest. "What do they eat?" "Meat," Dr. Thessa said, which, thank you, obvious. "Raw, preferably fresh. Their digestive systems are designed for high protein intake from live prey. We had plenty of preserved proteins in our stores, military-grade nutrition blocks that could be reconstituted into something resembling meat. It wasn't fresh, and it definitely wasn't alive, but it should work. We prepared a generous portion, placed it in front of the cubs, and waited for them to eat. They didn't eat. They looked at the food, sniffed it. One of them, the smallest, even tentatively licked it. Then all three backed away, making those distress calls louder. "Perhaps they don't recognize it as food," suggested Lieutenant Corax, our tactical officer and the closest thing we had to a predator specialist on board. Corax was a Drenthian, which meant he had 4 arms, scales that could deflect small arms fire, and absolutely zero patience for anything that didn't make logical sense. The scent profile might be too different from their natural prey. We tried fresh meat from our cold storage. Nothing. We tried warming it to body temperature. Nothing. We tried presenting it in different ways, on different surfaces, at different times. Nothing. 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 The cubs were getting weaker. We could see it in the way they moved, sluggish and uncertain. Their distress calls became quieter, which Dr. Thessa informed us was a very bad sign. "This doesn't make sense," I said. "Which is what you say when you're in command and something doesn't make sense, but you need to sound like you're still in control." "They're starving. The food is appropriate for their biology. Why won't they eat?" That's when Marcus, who had been sitting quietly in the corner watching this entire circus, stood up and said 6 words that should have worried me more than they did. "Mind if I try something?" Now, humans had been part of the Galactic Council for about 15 standard cycles at this point. Long enough that we knew they were weird, but not long enough that we fully understood how weird. They came from a death world, which was obvious to anyone who spent 5 minutes reviewing Earth's biological and geological history. Extreme temperatures, weather patterns that could kill you, tectonic activity, an atmosphere that was somehow both necessary for life and trying to kill you through oxidation, and predators. So many predators. But humans weren't apex predators themselves. They were, according to their own classification, persistence predators, pack hunters, social creatures that use their weird endurance and even weirder brains to literally chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Which sounded absolutely horrifying when you really thought about it, and I tried not to really think about it. "Sure," I said, because what was the worst that could happen? Famous last words, by the way. Marcus approached the cubs slowly. They watched him, those glowing eyes tracking his movement with the kind of focus that suggested they were calculating whether he was food, threat, or irrelevant. He knelt down, which put him at their eye level, and made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. The cubs tilted their heads, all 3 in perfect synchronization. It was adorable and deeply unsettling. Then Marcus did something that made every alarm in my head start screaming. He picked up a piece of the raw meat we'd prepared, looked at it for a moment, and bit into it. Just bit right into the raw, cold, unprocessed flesh like it was completely normal. He chewed. He swallowed. He made a face that suggested it tasted like what I imagine regret tastes like. But he didn't spit it out. "Marcus, what in the name of the Celestial Archives are you doing?" Dr. Thessa's voice went up about 3 octaves. "Building trust," Marcus said, his mouth still half full. He swallowed, grabbed another piece, and offered it to the nearest cub while taking another bite himself. And here's the thing that made my brain short-circuit. It worked. The cub, the one that had been watching Marcus with those calculating predator eyes, leaned forward, sniffed the meat in Marcus's hand, sniffed Marcus's face, then, very carefully, very gently, took the meat from his hand and ate it. The other 2 cubs immediately crowded forward, and Marcus, laughing, grabbed more meat and fed them piece by piece, taking a bite himself every few portions. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were eating enthusiastically, making happy chirping sounds that our translator rendered as contentment. "Someone explain what just happened," I said. because someone needed to explain what just happened. Lieutenant Corax was the first to figure it out. Pack behavior. They're infants. They won't eat unless a pack member demonstrates the food is safe. But Marcus isn't their pack, I said. He is now, Dr. Thessa said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. He just adopted 3 apex predator juveniles through food sharing. Marcus looked up at us, still hand-feeding a cub that could probably remove his arm if it wanted to. What? It's not that complicated. Baby animals don't trust new food. You show them it's safe by eating it first. It's parenting 1-on-1. You ate raw alien meat, I said, because I felt this point needed emphasis. From an unknown species, on an unexplored planet, without any testing. Yeah, Marcus said. It's not great, kind of chewy. Definitely needs salt. But I've had worse at gas stations. I didn't know what a gas station was, and I was afraid to ask. Over the next several planetary rotations, a pattern emerged that both fascinated and horrified our entire crew. The cubs, who Dr. Thessa named Azure, Midnight, and Storm because apparently giving them numerical designations was too cold, refused to eat unless Marcus ate first. Not me. Not Dr. Thessa. Not Lieutenant Corax with his predator credentials. Marcus. He became their pack leader through the simple act of being willing to eat whatever we put in front of them first. And let me tell you, watching a human bite into various forms of alien protein with the expression of someone enduring a particularly unpleasant medical procedure was both educational and deeply concerning. This one tastes like sadness and rubber, Marcus announced one day, holding up a nutrition block. Then why are you eating it? I asked. Because they need to see me eat it, or they won't eat it, and they need to eat. He took another bite, chewed with the determination of someone who had made peace with their poor life choices, and swallowed. Besides, I've had worse. This became his catchphrase. Everything was something he'd had worse. The processed protein that made Lieutenant Corax gag just from the smell. Had worse. The emergency rations that were designed to be edible by 17 different species and tasted like none of them would voluntarily eat it. Had worse. The fresh meat that our scanners confirmed contained trace amounts of compounds that would give most species intestinal distress. Had worse at something called a college cafeteria. Is your species' relationship with food some kind of mass survival strategy? Dr. Thessa asked one day, watching Marcus eat something that was technically edible but spiritually questionable. You could say that, Marcus said. Humans will eat basically anything if we're hungry enough. We've eaten things that tried to eat us. We've eaten things that were actively poisonous and just figured out how to prepare them so they wouldn't kill us. We've eaten things that don't even exist naturally because we invented them in laboratories. Our relationship with food is complicated and aggressive. That's terrifying, I said. That's evolution on a death world, baby, Marcus said, which didn't make it less terrifying. But here's the thing that really got to me. He was patient. Endlessly, impossibly patient. When the cubs were scared, he sat with them. When they were playful, he played with them, despite the fact that their idea of play involved pouncing and those retractable claws. He got scratched. A lot. Humans, it turns out, bleed very easily and bruise even easier. But he never got angry, never raised his voice. Just calmly explained to the cubs what gentle meant while Dr. Thessa patched him up for the 3rd time that day. Doesn't that hurt? I asked, watching her seal another set of claw marks on his arm. Sure, Marcus said, but they're kids. They don't mean to hurt me. They're just learning. You don't punish kids for learning. Even when they're apex predators? especially when they're apex predators. They need to learn control, or they'll hurt someone who won't be as understanding as me. The cubs grew attached to him in a way that our xenobiologist found academically fascinating, and I found personally concerning. They followed him everywhere, slept in a pile around him at night, made distressed noises if he was gone for too long. Azure, the largest, started grooming him, which involved a tongue that was designed to strip meat from bones being dragged across his hair in what Marcus assured us was affectionate. "This is my life now," Marcus said one morning, covered in 3 sleeping apex predators. "I have become furniture." "You have become pack," Dr. Thessa corrected. "They've accepted you as their parent." "I'm 28, Marcus said. "I can barely take care of a houseplant. I'm not qualified to parent apex predators." "And yet," Lieutenant Korax observed, "you are." The situation became complicated when we received orders to return to the research station. We'd completed our survey of Theta 7, cataloged the specimens, and it was time to move on. Which raised the question, what do we do with 3 juvenile apex predators who have imprinted on a human? "We can't leave them," Dr. Thessa said immediately. "They'll die without their pack." "We can't bring them to the research station," I countered. "They're dangerous." "They're babies," Marcus said. "And they're only dangerous if they're scared or threatened, which they won't be, because I'll be with them." "You're being reassigned after this mission," I reminded him. "Back to Earth. You can't take 3 alien predators to your home world." Marcus looked at me with an expression I'd come to recognize as his "I'm about to make your life complicated" face. "Why not?" "Because," I started, then realized I didn't actually have a good reason. Humans kept predators as companions on their homeworld. They called them pets, which was a woefully inadequate term for animals that ranged from small enough to fit in your hand to large enough to kill you. They domesticated wolves, for crying out loud. They lived with creatures that could, theoretically, eat them, and called it companionship. Earth has import regulations, I tried. Earth also has people who keep tigers in their backyards in places called Texas, Marcus said. "I think we can make an exception for 3 cubs that I've already been feeding and caring for." "That's not how regulations work," I said. But even as I said it, I knew I'd lost this argument. The cubs, as if sensing the conversation was about them, crowded around Marcus, making those contented chirping sounds. Azure headbutted his hand, demanding attention. Midnight curled around his feet. Storm, the smallest and most anxious of the 3, climbed partially up his back, which must have been painful given the claws. But Marcus just reached back and scratched between Storm's ears. "We could transfer them to a wildlife facility," Lieutenant Korax suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. "They won't eat for anyone but Marcus," Dr. Thessa reminded us. "We've tried. Remember when I attempted to feed them while Marcus was in medical? They refused for 2 full planetary rotations until he came back." "That was a fun conversation with Command," I muttered. "Yes, Admiral. The dangerous predators are on a hunger strike because the human is in medical for injuries sustained from the dangerous predators." "No, Admiral. I don't understand it either." In the end, we did what any reasonable people would do when faced with an impossible situation. We punted the decision up the chain of command and let them deal with it. I wrote a detailed report explaining the situation, the cubs' dependency on Marcus, and the potential risks and benefits of allowing him to continue as their caretaker. The response came back 3 days later. "Approved. If the human thinks he can handle apex predators, let him try. It'll be entertaining if nothing else. Document everything for the xenobiology database. They think it's funny, I said, reading the message. It is kind of funny, Marcus said. Storm draped across his shoulders like a very dangerous, very heavy scarf. Human adopts alien murder kittens. It's like every plot of every animal movie ever made, except in space. Murder kittens? Lieutenant Corax repeated. It's a term of endearment, Marcus assured him. Humans do that. We give threatening things cute names to make them less scary. It's a coping mechanism. Your species is so strange, Dr. Thessa said. But she was smiling. The journey back to the research station took another week, and in that time, I watched something remarkable happen. The cubs, who had been weak and traumatized when we found them, became healthy and confident. They played. They explored the ship under Marcus's supervision. They learned commands, sort of, in the way that young predators learn commands, which is to say they obeyed about 60% of the time, and the other 40% decided that whatever they wanted to do was more interesting. Marcus taught them constantly how to be gentle, how to play without hurting, how to respond to their names, how to not eat the electrical wiring, which was apparently a favorite snack and a constant problem. No, Marcus would say, pulling Midnight away from a junction box for the 5th time. We don't eat the ship. The ship is our friend. We like the ship. The ship keeps us from dying in the vacuum of space. Midnight would chirp, which the translator rendered as, "But it smells interesting." And Marcus would sigh and redirect her to an appropriate chew toy, which was a piece of reinforced polymer that could theoretically withstand those jaws. I found myself spending more time watching Marcus with the cubs than I probably should have. It was educational, seeing how he interacted with them, how he maintained authority without aggression, how he disciplined them without punishment, using redirection and patience instead of force. How do you know how to do this? I asked him one day, watching him separate Azure and Storm from a scuffle that was getting too rough. My sister has kids, Marcus said, settling both cubs down with gentle but firm handling. And I did a lot of babysitting growing up. The principles are the same. Set boundaries, be consistent, show them you care even when you're correcting them. These are apex predators, I felt the need to point out. Not human children. Yeah, and human children don't have claws or teeth like this, Marcus said. But they do have teeth, and they do bite when they're toddlers, and you teach them not to the same way. Patience and consistency. Kids are kids, whether they're human or alien murder kittens. You keep calling them that, Lieutenant Corax said. Because it makes me laugh, Marcus said. And if I don't laugh about the fact that I've been adopted by 3 creatures that could theoretically kill me, I'll think too hard about the fact that I've been adopted by 3 creatures that could theoretically kill me. But here's what I noticed. Marcus was never afraid of them. Cautious, yes. Aware of the danger, absolutely. But not afraid. He trusted them, and they trusted him. And that trust was built on something as simple as being willing to eat first. To show them that the food was safe, that they were safe, that this strange human who smelled weird and made funny sounds could be trusted to take care of them. When we finally reached the research station, word had spread about the human and his murder kittens. We had a crowd waiting at the docking bay, which was not standard protocol, and made me question the professionalism of everyone involved. Admiral Thexelar herself was there, which was either a very good sign or a very bad sign. She was a Vortan, which meant she stood 3 meters tall, had skin like granite, and commanded respect through sheer presence. "So," she said, looking at Marcus and the three cubs arrayed protectively around him, "you're the human who adopted apex predators." "In my defense," Marcus said, "they adopted me first. I just fed them." "By eating raw alien meat yourself first," the Admiral said, and I couldn't tell if she was impressed or horrified. Possibly both. "They wouldn't eat otherwise," Marcus said with a shrug. "And they needed to eat, so I ate. It's not complicated." "Everything about this is complicated," the Admiral said. But she was smiling. "Walk with me. You too, Zix Thor. Let's discuss the logistics of a human keeping 3 apex predators as companions." The discussion took 6 hours and involved so many legal documents that I briefly considered changing careers. In the end, Marcus was given official custody of Azure, Midnight, and Storm, with the understanding that he was responsible for their care, training, and any incidents that might occur. He signed approximately 40 different liability waivers, received training from our xenobiologists, and was assigned a handler to check in regularly. "You sure about this?" I asked him when all the paperwork was done and he was preparing to transport the cubs to Earth. "No," Marcus said honestly. "I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm sure that I'm not leaving them. They're my pack now, and humans don't abandon their pack." I watched him board the transport ship, 3 juvenile apex predators following him like ducklings, if ducklings were terrifying murder machines. Azure looked back at me once, those glowing eyes meeting mine, and I swear that creature understood more than we gave it credit for. The last thing I heard as they boarded was Marcus saying, "Okay, kids, new rule. On Earth, we don't eat the neighbors. The neighbors are friends, not food. We've talked about this." The cubs chirped in response, which could have meant agreement or could have meant, "We'll think about it." That was 3 standard cycles ago. I still get regular updates from Marcus. The cubs, now technically adolescents, are thriving. They've become minor celebrities on Earth, where humans apparently think that a man living with 3 alien apex predators is adorable and goals, and other terms that my translator struggles with. Marcus sends pictures. Azure, now the size of a human adult, lounging in what he calls a living room. Midnight, helping him in something called a garden, by which I mean lying in the sun while he works. Storm, the smallest, who apparently has anxiety issues and needs medication, sleeping on Marcus's bed. In his last message, Marcus said something that stuck with me. "Thanks for letting me keep them. They saved me as much as I saved them. Turns out sometimes the best way to find your pack is to be willing to take the first bite." I didn't fully understand what he meant then. I think I do now. Humans are strange creatures. They come from a death world that should have made them hard and cruel. Instead, it made them adaptable and compassionate. They'll eat raw meat to prove to scared juveniles that food is safe. They'll endure scratches and bites while teaching gentleness. They'll take on the responsibility of raising apex predators because those predators need someone, and they happen to be there. They build packs not through dominance, but through trust. And sometimes, trust starts with something as simple as being willing to eat first. I filed my final report on the incident last week. Command asked me to summarize what I'd learned from observing a human interact with juvenile apex predators. I thought about it for a long time. In the end, I wrote, "Humans are persistence hunters, but not in the way we thought. They don't just chase prey until it collapses. They persist in compassion until trust is built. They persist in patience until understanding is reached. They persist in care until family is formed. And they'll eat truly terrible food to prove a point. Also, never underestimate what a human will do for something they consider part of their pack. Even if that pack has claws, teeth, and every biological indication of being dangerous. Especially then. Admiral Thexelar approved the report, but added a note. You forgot to mention that humans think this is funny. She was right. I asked Marcus about it in my next message. Why do humans find this amusing? His response, because life is weird and scary and full of things that could kill you. You can either laugh about it or cry about it, and laughing is more fun. Plus, the cubs do this thing where they try to groom my hair and it sticks straight up after. Have you ever seen a human with bedhead caused by an alien apex predator? It's objectively hilarious. I hadn't. He sent pictures. It was objectively hilarious. I think that's what I'll remember most about Marcus Chen and his murder kittens. Not the danger, not the impossible situation, not the bureaucratic nightmare it caused, but the fact that a human, faced with starving apex predators on an alien world, chose compassion, chose patience, chose to take the first bite of questionable food to build trust with creatures that could have killed him, and then chose to laugh about it. That's humanity for you. They'll face down death with a smile and a terrible meal, and somehow make it work. Absolute madness. I respect it immensely.